Good morning, children. The next law is a consumer surplus. Next one is a consumer surplus. The consumer surplus means the concept of consumer surplus was originally introduced by the classical economist and later modified by the Jones and Julie Debate, the French engineer economist in 1844. But a most refined form of the concept of consumer surplus was given by Alfred Marshall. This concept is based on the law of diminishing marginal utility. This consumer surplus definition modified by the great economist Alfred Marshall. The consumer surplus as the excess of price which a person would be willing to pay a thing rather than go without the thing over that which he actually does pay is the economic measure of this surplus satisfaction. This may be called the consumer's surplus. Actually, the consumer surplus means willing to pay the amount minus actual cost of the product. That means the consumer surplus. Okay. This is the meaning of the consumer surplus. Here, the important assumptions are there. The first one is Marshall's assumed that utility can be measured. The marginal utility of money of the consumers remaining constant. There are no substitutes for the commodity in question. The fourth one is the taste, income and character of the consumer do not change. The last assumption is utility of the commodity does not depend upon the other commodity. These are the important assumptions of the consumer surplus. The consumer surplus explained about the concept. The concept of consumer surplus can be explained with the help of the example. Suppose the consumer wants to buy an apple. He is willing to pay ₹4 per apple rather than go without it, and the actual price of the apple is ₹2. Hence, the consumer surplus is ₹2. That means willing to pay amount 4, actual price is 2, so the remaining amount is 2. So that one is called the consumer surplus. Thus the consumer surplus is the difference between the price that a consumer is willing to pay. That means that otherwise is called the potential price, and what he actually pays. That is called the consumer surplus. The consumer surplus means what a person is willing to pay minus what he actually pays. Otherwise, the consumer surplus is equal to potential price minus actual price. In mathematical terms, consumer surplus is equal to TU minus P into Q. TU means total utility. P means price. Q means quantity demanded. Okay. That is the consumer surplus is equal to TU minus P into Q. Now we are going to see about how to calculate the consumer surplus. See the tabular column, children. The first column is the unit of commodity. apple. Okay, unit of commodities, apples. Then second one is the willingness to pay or potential price, that is the marginal utility. The third one is the actual price. Fourth one is the consumer surplus, that means the potential price minus the actual price. The units of commodity increasing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The willing to pay amount 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. But the actual price of the apple only rupees 2. See, now we are going to calculate the consumer surplus. Potential price minus actual price. So the 6 minus 2 is equal to 4. Then 5 minus 2 is equal to 3. 4 minus 2 is equal to 2. 3 minus 2 is equal to 1. 2 minus 2 is nil, 0. Okay. Now all of you understand how to calculate the consumer surplus? Yes, very good. See the diagram, children. The x-axis denotes the quantity demanded and the y-axis denotes the price. Point D is the consumers willing to pay amount on point D. Point P is the actual price of the commodity. Okay. Here one curve is sloping D1. That one is the demand curve. Okay. The differences between OD and OP, that is a consumer surplus. OD minus OP is a consumer surplus. Okay. The concept of consumer surplus can also be explained. See, when the price is OP, the amount demanded OQ. Hence, the actual price is OP CQ. OP into OQ. Okay. The potential price, the total utility, OD CQ. So, the consumer surplus means ODCQ minus OPCQ. ODCQ is 20 rupees. OPCQ is 10 rupees. So the consumer surplus is 10. So PDC, the area, the shaded area is called the consumer surplus. Now all of you understand? Yes, very good. See, the criticism of this consumer surplus, the utility cannot be measured because the utility is subjective. The second criticism, marginal utility of money does not remain constant. The third one, potential price is internal. It might be known the consumer himself. These are the three important criticism of this consumer surplus. All of you understand, children? That's all for today's class. Thank you.